Welcome back, everyone, to Game Reviews with Ludus Infinium. Today we are doing Dawn of War 3, a game with mixed reviews on Steam. Let's see just how I have rated it through my experience. I will be rating the game based on its combat, story, unit and hero dialogue, unit and faction variety, overall gameplay, and replayability. For combat, I give it a 7 out of 10. There's a good variation of different ways to attack or defend. My only real complaint is how overpowered the hero units are. However, if you take them for granted or use them in ways they weren't made for, they can very easily get overwhelmed, so it is a little bit more balanced. And in reality, you can play this game in a style that suits you, whether it be super aggressive, turtling up your defenses. You can play it in a variation of ways. It has the unit roster to be able to do that. For story, I gave it a 6 out of 10. It is a decent enough story, but I did have a few issues with it. Namely, there are very, very, very few instances of Space Marines working with Xenos. And when they do, normally it's with Eldar. However, there are also cases of Space Marines in the lore working with Chaos. I believe they were fighting the Tyranids, if I'm not mistaken. But to get them to work not just with the Eldar, but with the Orcs at the same time seems a little far-fetched. At the same time, though, this is a good example of Eldar diplomacy. This is how the Eldar reach out to other races. We want you to help us. But we don't like you, so we're going to kill you, and then you're going to help us. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's normally how it always turns out. So, it did get a few things right, lore-wise, in the story, but it got some things I think were, I don't know, they were put in there really just to make the game work. And even though I get that and I accept that, it's just Angelo should have been a little bit more reluctant in helping with the Orcs and the Eldar. That's just me though. For dialogue, I give it another 6 out of 10. It was okay. The only real complaint I have is there were times when I felt, especially the Orcs, had dialogue more fitting towards maybe human. It just didn't seem to really be orc enough. I mean, my orc impression and my friend Garlock's, of course, are really bad examples of what an orc should sound like. But I think there are times when even that sounds better than some of the dialogue that was in the game. But overall, it was still really good for a 40K game. It's just that there were moments when I was like, that doesn't sound like work. That sounds like someone just recording. When it came to the unit and faction variety, I gave it an 8 out of 10. There could have been more factions, but for the story, I think this case, less was more. There were some holes in the unit rosters for all the factions. But I think that was intentional to give them each their own little play style. But at the same time, it also it made me personally think of how to work around that hole. For instance, the Eldar, they had their shields, but after the shield was gone, they were a little squishy. So how do I work around that when doing a really huge attack? Because there's a chance that I could just lose all my troops. So it made me think, which I really like in an RTS game. So that was actually pretty perfect for me. For overall gameplay, I gave it a 6.75 out of 10. Overall, for me, it was a fun experience and a pretty good game. The flaws, I would give it in the unit roster. I whether or not they were intentional or not, were kind of meh, except for when they made you think about how to compensate. I would say, as far as all of the different RTS games I've played, going all the way back to Warcraft 1 and StarCraft 1, I would say this is probably barely above average. It's not the worst RTS I've played, and it's nowhere near the best. I think 6.75 is very fair. It is fun, and I wouldn't mind a few replays, time permitting, but again, it's not the greatest game I've ever played. For replayability, which I keep separate from gameplay, I did give it an 8 out of 10. I look forward to replaying Dawn of War 3 when I can, and to try out different tactics with all the races. With the orcs, I tried the orky approach, which was just mass choppas, and you know, it's stereotypical for the orcs. It was kind of fun. For the Blood Ravens, I kind of mixed up my tactics here and there. For the Eldar, I did the same, but I was trying to learn as I went. So it'd be cool to go back and try it with a few different tactics. In conclusion, for me, it is a game that, even though it does have flaws, most of those flaws do give it its charm. I do think that some of the criticisms it has received have been unfair and strictly because of its name. Had it not been a Dawn of War game, I think it would have been more well received amongst the fan base. I will say, however, I did not play the multiplayer against the AI that much, except for doing this video. And in the experience I had, it was pretty fucking unbalanced. So, my grading will strictly be on the campaign itself. I don't think that would necessarily take away from the game because, as I said before, I would love to go back and just replay the campaign a couple times. And on the campaign alone, I would give it, I would say, as I did before, above average in the RTS. It's not the best game I've ever played, but it's nowhere near the worst. It's somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit above the middle. And I think that if people could look past the name and just look at it as a 40K RTS and not expect it to be a spiritual successor to Dawn of War 1 and 2, then they would enjoy it. But as long as they have this desire for it to be something it's not, then they'll just continue to hate it. I hope you all enjoyed this game review video of the Dawn of War 3 campaign. I know that there were times when it was taxing, but it was actually a pretty fun experience. So, with all that being said, if you'd like to support the channel, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the little bell because YouTube likes to make people go through all these extra steps. And if you want to help support the channel and help mold it into something better, subscribe to my Patreon, join the Discord, give me ideas, let me know what you want to see in the future. But with all that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!